he was lost to the world, so to say. Nobody took any notice of him, so to say. And he was all the time absorbed in his love for God and wandering from one street to another, from one village to another, one town to another. One day this musk was passing by, and there was a certain yogi who was seated there, you see, on a seat. And he spotted the musk going by in front of him. His attention was drawn to this God-absorbed personality, you see, that was there, the musk, as Baba calls them. And he just stopped him and says, "Hey, ho, wait, where are you going?" he asks the musk. So the musk, in his usual way, says, "Well, I'm going to God." Because they are all the time in communion with God. He says, "You are going to God?" He says, "Yes, I am going to God." "Well, will you carry a message from me?" He says, "What message? What is the message that you want to give?" He says, "Tell my beloved Lord that I have been living a life for 40 years, all in solitude, waiting for His command and His grace for the release, for my emancipation. 40 long years I have passed in solitude, meditation, concentration, and all sorts of austerities. And there is no sign from Him, no sign of His recognition about it. Will you convey this message to my Lord?" So the musk said, of course, I will." Well, he passed by, and the yogi again got himself engrossed in his meditation and concentration and all sorts of austerities. One village, another town, another city, and all that. He came to another city, and he was passing by a house of a certain person who was loving God, who lived his life in the most natural way. He had his family, wife and children. He had his work to do for his livelihood, and he loved God in his own simple way. He recognized this man of God, the musk, and he says, "Hey, where are you going?" He just casually told him that. "Oh," he says, "I am going to God. I am going to visit Him." "Is that so? Is it true?" He says, "Yes." So this man who loved God said, "Will you please carry a message to Him and ask Him, how many more years, how many more incarnations are there for me to get emancipated and to be one with you, my Lord?" He says, "Right, I will convey this message to you." And years passed by, and there was no trace and no sign of this man of God. Well, it so happened that after many years, this man of God again passes by, and the yogi spots him again. By this time the yogi is so old and far advanced in age and weak. So he recognizes the man of God and says, "Did you convey my message to my Lord? So many years have passed by and there is no answer from Him yet." He says, "Yes, I did convey your message to the Lord." And what was his reply? Well, his reply is that despite all your efforts and your austerity and your one-pointed devotion and attention on me through meditation and concentration, there are 40 more lives for you to realize me. The yogi said, he lost his heart. He says, 40 more lifetimes. I thought that in this very lifetime I would be emancipated. 40 more lifetimes. He says, yes, that's the reply. He was very sad at heart and did nothing. He continued with his practice. Then after another couple of months or a year passed by, and the man of God passes through that same city where the lover of God had asked him to convey the message. And through divine providence, it so happens this man spots him. The lover of God spots him again. He says, "Hey, did you come back from God?" He says, "Yes. You had asked me to carry a message for you." He says, "I have carried it." So what's the reply? Tell me. He says, "Well, God has replied." He says, "Well, He's pleased with your love," he says. "And there are 400 more lifetimes for you. 400 times you'll have to reincarnate to become one with Him." Did He say that? Did He recognize me? Did He even give cognizance to my being here and loving Him? Oh, how wonderful it is that my Lord condescended to recognize this little fact that I loved Him. And says, what is this 400 lives for that? It's nothing in comparison to it. That He has given His little attention to me. And the instant he experienced this, the next experience of it was God realization. This is what counts most, you see, is how close and one you are with your Lord, you see, in your love for Him. Yeah. Whereas that man got so confused with 40 more lifetimes. And here, God has just recognized His love, and that's enough for a man. And he gets lost in it, in the very thought of it, that the Lord condescended to recognize this, giving cognizance to my petty love for Him, enough to drown him in that.
Was a master who had several disciples, and one of his disciples kept on pestering him for God's realization. And he kept on pestering him and pestering him. The master said, "You wait. But still the disciple, he kept on nagging at the master, and every chance he had, he would ask the master for God's realization. So the master decided, I'm going to fix that for you. Good. He said, tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock I shall give you God's realization. And you've got to stay awake all night. And I will knock on the door. But you will knock on the door and I'll give you God's realization. So this fellow was all excited, and he stayed up all night, awake and faithfully kept awake. And the very last few minutes he fell asleep, just before 5 o'clock. He fell asleep. And along comes the milkman, and knocks on the door. He got a God realization.
See how it happens. Yes, that's how it is. That's the pleasure of the Lord. And yes.
Eruch, what does it mean to somebody that doesn't know about the advent of Baba, to tell them about Baba's advent, that the avatar has come, and they don't act upon it, and they just say, well, it's just another person in India. Yeah, just a bunch of baloney.
Well, to that we have got Baba's own assurance, you see. He has told us that it's your bounden duty to share this great news with the world about His advent, time and again, whenever He comes, you see, on this earth. He wants the world to know about it. And those few who are close to Him and recognize Him and have the conviction of the advent, to them He gives this responsibility to go out and share this information with the rest of the world. And there came a certain person to Baba in this advent and said the same question that you put today. And he said, the reply that Baba gave was that it is immaterial whether the person accepts it or not. it's enough for the person's ears to hear the news of the Advent. Whether he knows it or not, he is much benefited by it. So it is not our, responsibility to see that the word of information that we give about his Advent penetrates his heart. As long as we discharge our responsibility but by bringing it to his ears, our duty is over.
If nothing, a contact is made, a link that will serve at some time in some Advent, because Baba would lay great stress on connection with him. Even if it's an indirect connection, as only hearing his name, the connection is there, the link is forged, and which will serve in future time. It's very important. But that's only since Baba released his name, released the grace of his name. Because for a long period, Baba kept his name in seclusion, as it were. When we were traveling with Baba in the blue bus, for instance, or when the men Mandali were traveling with Baba in trains on must tours and things like that, and Baba would never let us divulge his identity, who he is. Not only that, we couldn't even call out to Baba by saying Baba. Only just Baba, although it could mean any Baba, but it might give a clue to who Baba is. So when we got down at little hotels or little places, resting places for the night on our blue bus journey, when we stopped, we couldn't talk to Baba if the hotel staff was there, or if we went into the dining room, for instance. So I still remember Norina would call Baba Babuli, and Nadine Tolstoy, she would call Baba Babuchka, so as not to let it slip. So then when the time came when Baba opened the gates to release the grace of his name, when he told everybody, give out my name, spread it, just give it, the gift of his name. So then when that is released from him, it is not we who are taking his name and giving it to anybody. Baba has released it. We are simply helping it reach whoever it is that we come in contact with. And it is always so that especially when you love somebody and they have not had the touch of Baba's love, you naturally want to share with them what you know is the most precious thing in life, what you have received. So it doesn't matter, just saying it is a great blessing.
Another thing now that brings to my memory is how compassionate he is. After he released his precious name for humanity's sake, there were instances when people around him who had heard of it and were ready to share his name with others, they were themselves not confident whether they were convinced of his being the God-man. And to them he said, be not hypocrites and say that Baba is the Ancient One when you are not yourself convinced about it. Because it is always best to be honest. Unless and until you are honest, nothing reaches the heart of the others. In which case, Baba says, what you can do is to tell others about his name. But before you tell it, say it, that Mehera Baba says that he is the Ancient One. See how compassionate he is? He takes upon himself the burden of another man's doubt, of somebody who has not that full conviction. So from this we learn how very important the responsibility one has, who has heard about him and has come in his close association, of giving the name and sharing with others. If one is not convinced, say that Meher Baba says that he is the Ancient One. It is his advent. That's what he says. That's all. So that's the importance of it. And one other great thing, you see, it's a very, very good story that we got it from Baba. It's mythological. It may have happened, may not have happened in his past advent. But as it comes from Baba, it will be very interesting for you all to hear it. Should I tell you the story and digress from our question and answer session? It has to do with the same theme, you see. Whether one deserves his name or whether one does not deserve it, it has its own impact. So, at the time of Lord Krishna, there was one of his disciples there. And he is named as Narad, mythologically. This disciple was a dedicated disciple of Lord Krishna. He lived with him for many, many years. After passing so many years in his close association, he felt that he just remained the same as he was. There was no intrinsic change in him at all. And he became very sad at this prospect and felt that he had lost his youth, his manhood, and is now far advanced in age, and he has not gotten anything by being with the Lord himself. Of what use my being by his side? This depressed him and made him feel very miserable, and naturally it affected his mood. So the Lord inquired as to, well, Narad, what's the matter with you? You were considered to be very humorous and lively here in this darbar of mine. And what's the matter with you? What happened all of a sudden? So he said, there's no such thing as anything that has happened to me, but I feel myself so unworthy of being by your side now. He says, why do you say that? What makes you say that? He says, well, I find myself just the same as I had joined you on the first day. He says, you do not realize how blessed you are, by being in my proximity. He says, well, Lord, that's your pleasure. That's how you would say it. But I know who I am. Then the Lord says, I know you more than what you know of yourself. And you are really blessed. You are indeed blessed. Not only you are blessed, but all who live by my side are indeed blessed. You know not how blessed you are. So, in order to give a little indication of how blessed he is, the Lord gives an order to Narad and says, look, I will give you the proof of how blessed you are. So that gave him some enthusiasm, that gave him some life, so to say, to Narad. And he selected a spot and says, look, the next day in the morning, the first thing that you do is you go to the fringes of the town there, and you remember that well that we had been on that certain day, and further away from the well, there are many mango trees. There's a grove of mangoes there. And go there and you'll get the proof of how blessed you are. Do it the next day. So Narad had to obey, because the most important thing for one to do, living by the side of the God-man, is to obey him. All what one has to do is to obey him, that's all. So he said, he went there the next day. And early hours of the morning he goes there. Just at the time of dawn he is there. And he goes hither and thither, he waits, he looks up on the trees there, and he looks at the horizon, he looks near the well, he is just wandering and not knowing what proof he will receive. He thought that he might hear a voice, or he thought the angels might say something, you see, from the heavens, saying that how blessed you are, or some such thing he thought. And he waited there for hours together. And then what he found was, the sanitary system of primitive India was at the time, and everywhere in the world, human beings have to go out for nature's call. And what they do is they go out and sit at secluded places. And you have all these flops, you see, in the morning hours, you see, everywhere. Whether they be on the outskirts of the village or on the fringes of the forests, or in there you are there. So all what he had, the proof was just he had so many of these, you see there. All in a row and line. So all of a sudden, his attention is drawn towards one big heap there, you see. And he looks at it, it was unusually big, you see. And he looks, and all of a sudden, what he sees, he spots this worm coming out of it. And he looks at it, and he's surprised, you see. And he felt that his eyes fell on the eyes of the worm. And no sooner the eyes met, the worm collapsed and died. Well, he didn't pay any cognizance and anything of the sort. It was just childishness on his part, he thought, and he wandered here and there again. He was there till afternoon and there was no sign. He returned to the ashram of the Lord, you see. That is the Lord's place where they all lived. And Lord Krishna, completely as if he had forgotten about the whole thing, he remained absolutely indifferent, never asked Narad about it. After some days, couple of weeks you may call it, all of a sudden the Lord remembered. He says, Narad, didn't you find the proof the other day when I sent you there? He says, no, my Lord, there was no proof that I saw or witnessed. He says, you saw nothing? He said, no proof whatsoever. So what did you see then? Shit. And he was so disappointed that Narad, in his dejection, a mood of dejection, he just uttered this, nothing but shit. And the Lord smiled and says, no, it cannot be. You are really blessed. You are indeed blessed, I tell you. He says, no, do one thing. I will definitely give you a proof of who you are, what has become of you by being near me. Then he again pointed out to him, says, look here, you go to a certain orchard there, and again you'll find that big mango tree, and you remember we had that picnic the other day there, and I sat under the tree there. He says, yes, I remember the tree. There is a hollow there, you see, and from inside the hollow you'll get the sign. So he told him to go there. So he went. It was his order. And he goes there in the morning, you see. And again he just looks here and there, and he is just looking at the hollow of the tree there, on the trunk. And there is nothing, no sign, nothing. After some time, he hears some chirping of the birds. And out comes a little parrot. Parakeet pops out of the hollows. And he looks at him. And no sooner Narad looked at him, the bird fell dead again. Oh, he says, that's the great humor of the Lord. Yes, I recall how I looked at the worm and it died. It's true, he gave me the sign of how unworthy I am, that even these creatures on whom my sight falls die. He is completely dejected. Totally dejected, and returns home. And Lord, as if nothing has happened, nothing. Months passed by, years passed by. Nothing has happened. And the Lord completely forgot about the thing, apparently. One day he tells Narad, he says, Narad, you shouldn't feel dejected like this. I tell you, you are very worthy, you are very blessed. Didn't I give you the proofs? He says, yes, my Lord, you did give me the proof of how unworthy I am. So what do you mean by that? I am saying that you are so blessed, you are so worthy about. He says, no, I received the proof that how unworthy I am by being near you. He says, you are mistaken. And then it was all completely, again, a blackout there on this issue. After a couple of years of this incident, a prince comes to the Lord, and he comes to pay his homage there from the neighboring kingdoms. Lord Krishna was himself of the princely families. So this prince comes there and asks the Lord, you see, for his blessings. So the Lord inquires as to where he was for so many years and what had happened, and he had grown big, and then he says, yes, I got married, and then I have a bonny son now. I have come here to beg of you to pay a visit to my palace and bless the child. The Lord said that that's not possible because I'm so preoccupied and busy here with my own affairs, it's not possible for me to go there. But I can do one thing. I will send a representative from my darbar here. One of my Mandali will go there. And Narad was very apprehensive about the whole thing, lest the Lord pointed at him to go, because he thought that if ever he is selected to go there, and if his eyesight were to fall on the child, the prince would die, and the whole burden of blame would come on him. And maybe his life is not secure at all now. So again his mind started telling him, prompting him to speak in terms like this, that well, my Lord, maybe he's so disgusted with my unworthiness that he might want to get rid of me, so he might select me to go there. And indeed the Lord selected him as his representative to go there. And this Narad now, very apprehensive about his life and how it will all work out, the Lord instructed him to go there and bless the child on his behalf and represent him and all that. He says, look how blessed you are. I am sending you as my representative there. Narad didn't know anything about it. So he went with the great prince there, and naturally it was a tiring journey and all that, so the prince received him with right royally, as if he would receive the Lord, because he is representative of the Lord himself. And the next day he was brought in the bedchamber of the queen there to view the child and bless the child. So Narad was determined not to look at the child, not allow his eyesight to fall on the child's eyesight, or else the child might die. So after he entered the bedchamber there, and then it so happens that he looks aside, you see, and just mutters, you see, all the words that he had heard from the Lord, you see, and discharges his duty, you see, half-heartedly, and he just keeps his eyesight away from the child. After all he had said, he hears a voice right inside the room there, where the mother is lying, the child is there, the king is himself there, the prince. So he hears this in presence of all the royal family. He says, Narad, why are you so upset with me? What makes you turn your gaze away from me? Please do look at me. Narad's ears are up, you see, tingling. He says, what's this? So he says, Narad, how blessed you are. You remember the day that I was a worm and your sight fell on me, and in no time I became a parrot. How blessed you are to be in close association with the man, with the God-man. No sooner your sight fell on me as a parakeet, I dropped dead, and now I'm a prince. If ever you spot me again and let your gaze be on me, I'll drop dead and become one with your Lord. Do it. Narad was so ashamed of his attitude towards the Lord, you see. He just bowed down in humility and left the palace and came back after discharging his duty. And the Lord asked, what happened? How it was all? How did it pass? Was it everything? Everything most natural, as if he knows nothing. That's his attitude all the time with us human beings. And then he presses Narad as to give a detailed report of what had happened in front of all who were present there. And Narad has to give it. So then the Lord says, didn't I tell you? Do you remember that? I told you how blessed you were, and you felt so dejected and unhappy and miserable about it. See, that's how it is. You do not know. How can you know that? Had you known, you would be useless to me.
That's important.
Had you known who you are, you would be useless to me for my work. You all are my instruments. But blessed you all are to be by my side. So that's the story. You see.